special guest, Mr. Kris, share his screen because he's going to teach us today.
All right. I don't know about being special, but I like engineering and I like science just like Miss Megan does. And so I am going to try to share my screen. And today we're going to learn about dams. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I haven't used this particular program, so hopefully I can get it to work. So if everybody can see this picture, I've got it up on my big screen, and Aiden and Lizzie are behind me. So if they chime in every once in a while, they can help me teach. So this dam that you see on your screen is actually in northern Colorado, and it's one of the biggest dams in the United States. And there's a big lake behind it, and this one actually has a power plant attached to it. We're going to learn about that in just a little bit. All right, so today we're going to talk about what dams actually are, when did people start building them, where are they, and then why do we use them, and what can we use them for, and how do we be safe around different kinds of dams. This picture is actually of the Oroville Dam in Northern California, and it is the tallest dam in all of the United States. It's almost 700 feet tall from the base of the riverbed. And so it's super deep. And a few years ago, and I believe it was 2018, part of the spillway where the water flows through the dam started to erode, and they had to fly helicopters over top of the dam and drop giant boulders to stop the dam from eroding. So there was almost a catastrophic event at this particular dam. So they were able to stop it from happening, but it scared a lot of people, because if this dam were to break, there are a whole bunch of cities and towns along the river that would have been covered in water. So we're going to learn a little bit about that later too. So a little bit about me. As you know, I am Aiden and Elizabeth's dad, and my full-time job is I'm actually a fire chief for a fire department here in the Madison, Wisconsin area, and I've been doing that for about 20 years. And I love to teach, and I have a degree in fire science. So, and this is a picture of Aiden and Elizabeth and myself just a couple weeks ago when we were on our drive home from California. All right, so what are dams? So the technical definition of a dam is a structure that holds back water or other liquids. And so almost always it's holding back water, but they actually, sometimes farmers make dams on their property, and and it sounds kind of yucky, but they'll make a little dam to store the remnants or the droppings of cows and cattle and horses and pigs, and they can have basically a swimming pool of poop. So sometimes farmers and people build dams to hold back that kind of stuff too. But this picture here, this is actually, I believe, in Thailand, where this dam is located. And they're usually located on rivers or small streams. And they are used to build reservoirs, and we're going to talk about what a reservoir is in a little bit. That's just a man-made lake. And then they help us store water so that we can use it in the future. So when did people start building dams? They have, archaeologists have been able to find remnants of dams dating back over 4,000 years ago. So ancient Egyptians used to make dams along the Nile River to divert water and to hold water so that they could irrigate their crops. And then the Mesopotamia, which is now Iraq, Italy, and India have some of the other oldest dams in the world that have been found made out of stone and gravel and different types of earth. And for the most part, dams were used where they would stop the flow of a river, and then they would take the water that they stopped with the dam and use it for watering their crops. For the most part, over 4,000 years ago, and even before that, the people who built dams, they passed down their dam building knowledge from generation to generation. And so if I knew how to make a really, really good dam, I would pass that information on to my kids and my grandkids and my neighbors, and they would improve upon my design to make it even better and to make them bigger and stronger. And thanks to modern engineering and the ability to use computers and different types of programs, they can build dams bigger and stronger than they ever could before. So where are dams built? So this is a map of the United States, and currently there are over 90,000 registered dams through the U.S. Geological Survey, and almost all of these dams need to be inspected to make sure that they're safe, because if you build a dam along a river and you start to block that water, the water downstream has less of a flow. And so people build cities along rivers, right along the riverbank. And if that dam were to break, the river level would rise and it could flood the entire town below the dam. And so there are officials and inspectors that actually go to dams all over the country, and those dams have to be inspected on a regular basis to make sure that they're holding the water the right way and that they're safe. But it kind of looks like that map of the United States has chicken pox, doesn't it? And so on this particular map, every dot that's red means that there is a town or a city immediately downstream of where that dam is located. And so if that dam were to fail, it would flood an entire town. So that's what all the red dots are for. And then all the yellow dots are areas where if the dam were to break, it wouldn't have as big of an impact downstream. And then the ones that are brown mean that if the dam were to break, it probably wouldn't flood anybody's house. So I thought this map was super interesting when I found it when I was looking at dam stuff. All right, so dams hold back water and they're placed on rivers, but what do we use them for? And so there's tons and tons of reasons that people make dams, but actually the most popular reason that people make a dam is for recreation. And so making a dam for recreational purposes, they can make a man-made lake or a person-built lake, so that we could go fishing or swimming or boating. And actually, Aiden and Elizabeth and I went swimming on Tuesday this week in a man-made lake, and it was made specifically for recreation. And so they have a county park not far from where we live, and about 50 years ago they made a dam and they stopped the flow of a very small stream. And when they stopped the flow of that very small stream, over time the water level rose and rose and rose, and now there's a lake that's about 20 feet deep and about the size of 2.5 football fields. So they happened to build that dam just for recreational purposes. Some of the other things that we use it for, which probably are more prevalent in plain states and areas where there isn't as much water, is they'll create a dam on a river or a waterway so that they can save water so that they can water their crops. So when they're going to grow things in the field, especially in areas where it's dry, they'll create a dam, which makes a small lake, and then they can use that water that builds up in the lake to water their crops and feed their animals. Some places use it to store water for fighting forest fires. And then in other areas, they use dams to help control flooding. So if anyone's ever been to the Mississippi River, it runs from Minnesota all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, north to south in the United States. And all along the Mississippi River, there are sets of locks and dams to help control the water flow right, as it goes from the northern section of the United States to the southern section of the United States. And those locks and dams are just controlling water flow. So when it rains a lot or the snow melts come spring after the wintertime, there's a lot of water that flows into the river, and they want to control it so that the towns along the river don't flood. So they want to manage how high or how much water is actually in the river, and they use the locks and dams to do that. So those are some of the most prevalent things. But then we also can use dams to give us hydroelectric power. Does anybody know what that might mean? Hydroelectric power? Aiden says water power. Lizzie says water power. So that's exactly what it is. So in the United States, dams create about 10% of all of our energy needs in the United States. And so hydropower is a renewable energy source. So what we do is we actually harness the energy of the water flowing down the river by putting a dam in. And I'm going to show you some pictures here on the next slide of how they actually do that. Water power or hydroelectric power reduces our carbon footprint. And so Miss Megan talked about a couple weeks ago about needing to be energy efficient and not adding to air pollution and things like that. And so by having hydroelectric power generated, it actually reduces our carbon footprint. So here's a little chart, a little graph of what the dams are used for, and this is in the United States. And so just like I was saying before, recreation is the most popular way that we use dams. So we make lakes, and then there's fire protection and farm ponds, flooding control, irrigation, water supply, mine waste retention, hydroelectric, and then on down from there. So this slide has a lot going on right now. So this slide in the top middle shows what a dam looks like. And on the left side, there's some water flowing in through the bottom of the dam in the penstock. And that water flows through what's a giant turbine. And the turbine, I don't know if you can see my pointer on the screen, but the turbine actually spins, and when the water causes this turbine to spin, that's what creates the electricity. And so the electricity comes off of these turbines, and then they send it out through the power grid after the water passes through. So does anybody know, well, it says it right on the screen, but does anybody know the name of this particular dam in both of these pictures? Yep, it's the Hoover Dam. Yep. And so the Hoover Dam provides power to about 8 million people in Arizona, Southern California, and Southern Nevada. And so they harness the energy of the water flowing down the Colorado River. They created this dam to harness that energy of the river to create power so that they could have power for the people in those particular areas. They also use water from the lake that's created, and the lake created behind the Hoover Dam is actually called Lake Mead. And Lake Mead used to be one of the largest reservoirs or water retention or man-made lakes, if you will, in the United States. And then over time, the volume or the amount of water in that particular reservoir has gotten lower and lower and lower. Megan, you talked about that a little bit and how there's a water shortage or a drought condition in Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona. And so we might need to, excuse me, we may need to conserve water. And if you look real close at this picture on the left-hand side, you can see that there's dark rock on top up here, and there's light rock down here below. And everywhere you see the light rock, that used to be covered in water. And so the water level in Lake Mead has dropped nearly 30 feet in the last 15 years. And so in the last 15 years, we haven't gotten nearly as much water as we had in the past in that section of the United States. And so the water is getting less and less and less and less. And that could be problematic in the future because lots of people rely on the water flow that comes through that dam for power and electricity. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right. So dams can be really, really big, just like the Hoover Dam is a huge dam, but you may have a water spillway or a small dam like this near your house. A lot of these you might see inside of a town where it looks super calm and the water's nice and smooth, but I do want to warn you that dams can be very, very dangerous because when the water flows over the top of a dam, it actually picks up speed. And so it might look nice and calm, but that water is moving really, really fast and it could sweep you off your feet if you were to try to step in there. And I'm a pretty big guy. It would even sweep me or an adult away if we were to try to step into that water. And if you're not careful, it could sweep you all the way downstream. So even though they look peaceful and fun, they can be very dangerous. And we never want to play on or near a dam for fear that you might slip and fall in. And we need to make sure that we always have a parent with us when we're walking in and around dams and rivers. So, does anybody have any questions about dams?
I have a question, Mr. Kris.
Yes.
How do fish get through dams?
Oh, that's a good question. So it depends on the type of dam. So let's find a good picture. In a dam like this, where it's super, super big, they actually create a special spillway. So there's kind of a trough at the top of the dam, and the fish can get funneled to that trough, and the fish actually can hop up onto it, and they'll slide down a big slide from one side of the dam all the way down to the other. That way they don't go through the turbine, and they actually put up kind of like a fence so that the fish can't flow into where they're trying to generate power from. So like in the Hoover Dam, this could be really bad for the environment and for fish if all of the fish just swam through the middle of that power turbine. And so what they do is they actually create a detour specifically for the fish, and they funnel them to one spot so that they flow through without going through the rest of the turbine. Lizzie
They have a special fish highway. That's pretty cool.
Yes, they have they made a engineer a very special fish highway.
I came up with something funny. It's like for the fish, the giant slide is kind of like Disney World.
It's Lizzie says it's like Fishney World.
Disney
Fishney World.
That's very silly.
Yep. Does anybody else have questions about dams? Some dams are so big that you can actually drive across them, like the Hoover Dam. That actually used to be the highway, and so the only way to get across Lake Mead or the Colorado River at that place, you actually had to drive across the dam. But they were worried about the number of cars and the volume and the wear and tear that it caused on the top of the dam, so they created this overpass. That's what this bridge is way down here. So this bridge right here, it now bypasses the Hoover Dam. So if you're going to go to that area, you have to take a special exit off of the highway to go down by the dam. And this is what it looks like when you're on that bridge. So when I was driving home with the kids just a few weeks ago, we weren't able to get to the dam because it was closed because of all the COVID concerns. And so we're like, oh, we'll just drive across the bridge and I'll take a picture of the dam from the bridge. And so this is me taking a picture of the Hoover Dam, and you can't even see it. That was pretty silly. We drove 2,000 miles and we still didn't get to see it. So
Wait,
we were
was
so
it a
close.
detour?
Yeah, there was a detour.
Hey,
So, all right. So we have some activities and things. Megan, do you want to talk through this?
Sure. So for little kids 0 to 6, you guys can draw a dam or a warning sign that you would see at a dam. Big kids 7 to 10 can make a comic about dam construction or write a few sentences about safety around dams. And then middle schoolers from 11 to 13 can write a paragraph about the history of dam construction or create a comic about the positives and the negatives of dams. And then it looks like Kris has lots of resources for you, and I'll make sure that I share those with you when I send out the email about this class.